Okay, no, we're getting right into it. Nobody said they wanted to take a break, so
A break would be awesome.
Oh, okay, let's take a break.
Okay.
Be right back. After these. Okay, rolling. Here we go. Let's do some color correcting. Premiere Pro comes with a really awesome color correcting tool called Lumetri Color. And it prefers a workspace that is, if you go up here to your workspaces, if you click on color, it'll switch over to Lumetri Color. I'm going to save this just to be safe. Now what we have here are some problems with exposure because this shot of her is definitely darker than this shot of him. And this shot is much more saturated than that shot. Okay, so we need to deal with all those issues. So Lumetri Color is pretty cool because it has a lot of different controls for color correcting in it. If I select any clip in the timeline, there are two different options for color correcting this. If I correct with this hallway scene clip 006.mp4, if that's blue, then it's going to correct this clip on the timeline and only that instance of it. If I click on this tab, this master, and turn that blue, then it's color correcting that shot for the project. Okay, so you can do two different color corrections. You can do one color correction that just does a nice even balance for everything, and then once it's on your timeline, you can add more color correction for stylized stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna do this color correction for this clip in the master because I want this clip, no matter how many times I use it in the project, I want it to have the same color correction. So let's start at the top. Under Basic Color Correction, if I click on that, we can do something really quick, and that is this white balance selector. If we click on that eyedropper, and then we select something that is white, or that should be white. Is the wall white? No, it was beige. The wall is beige. So if I click on that, it's going to color correct my scene as though that right there is white. Which actually looks pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, lesson's over.
How did you do that again?
If you click on the white balance selector eyedropper, I'm actually going to select this piece of paper over here because that's really going to be white. Now my beige wall is still beige. Okay, that looks pretty good too, right?
It's a lot better because it had way too much yellow.
Yeah, if I undo that and select this, it's going to add way too much blue to the scene. It actually starting to affect their skin color, kind of taking some of the life out of their skin. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper and select that piece of paper in the background. Next, what we'll do is I want to bring up some scopes, and so if I go up to my window, select another. I do this every time. Another reference monitor. Then it'll bring up this extra window, and I'm going to put it up here to share space with these things up here. And then in the reference monitor that I just dropped up there, if I click on this menu off to the side of this tab, then hold on a second, I'm making myself look like an idiot. Do this every year. Okay, sorry. Sometimes I have to remind myself of this stuff. With all this color correction going on, if I go with all this selected, if I click over on Lumetri Scopes, click on that, this will show me various ways of looking at this scene. Right now, we have, if we view this from left to right, this is the brightness, color balance, and contrast of everything that's over on this side of the screen, and it goes from left side of the screen to right side of the screen. So as you go across, you can see this really bright stuff right here. That's going to be that pillar of light. This is the pillar. This is the space in between him and the pillar. This is his shirt down here, because he's got a dark color, like most of his clothes are dark. Then here's the wall in between them, and then she's getting dark because she's got dark pants on and everything. And then this gradient is going brighter and brighter up to that right side of the screen. Does that make sense? So as I scroll along, you can kind of see them step closer, can see people walking in front. Okay. So with a beige wall, it's okay that this red is brighter than the green and the blue, but if we wanted to, we can add our own color temperature by going to the next slider. Well, let me go to the master clip here. If I go to this slider and I drag it even farther down to the blue, and as soon as we are able to get the red and the green and the blue to collide, that will form white in this RGB parade.
What if they don't 100% collide? Do you just go as close as you can, or?
Well, it depends on what you're going for, because with the eyedropper, we already got this pretty close. We could see how that's kind of colliding right there. That's that white that we selected. So it's already getting pretty close as far as the camera's settings to actual light in these, or white in these lighting conditions. There's also, remember, I don't know if I told you this last time, but fluorescent lights are quite green. And that's why the eyedropper took this and started pushing this slider toward the magenta so much to get it away from green, because fluorescent lights have a green hue to them. Now next up, what we can do is change our exposure so that we can darken them a little bit, darken the whole scene overall. We can actually do some stuff with the highlights and the contrast. I don't usually mess with contrast, because once you change the exposure, the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks to where you want them to be, it already adds contrast to your scene. So what I want to do is I'm going to go in here to my whites. The whites are like all the way white. So if I bring my whites down, it just takes this top line and it pulls it down. See how much information? That's actually a pretty good camera, because I'm able to pull that much back down. If that were truly clipped, well, which it probably is, if that were truly clipped, that would just be a straight line that comes straight down, and it would just cut off right there. But we're actually getting information back. So depending on how much you care about this space right here, it's actually still pretty clipped. Depending on how much you care about seeing that, you could just pull the whites down till you get a little bit more detail back. But once you get down past a certain point, all we're doing is turning that a shade of gray rather than a different, more details within the white. See, there's actually a line right here I can see. This projector's a little better. There's a line right here I can see where there's just no detail right here. Okay. So pulling the whites down all the way, that's not doing us any favors. So maybe a little bit would be fine. Highlights are kind of this area, but like right here. And if I pull the highlights down, what that does is it tries to stretch this area out so that I can pull my highlights down without trying to affect this stuff too much. And see what that did to the wall? That's kind of like the highlights area. And then if I wanted to push that up, I could push it up a little bit also. Okay, so this is a romantic comedy. We probably want something a little lighter and fun. So the highlights will also bring all this stuff up, and it'll try and compress this stuff before getting to the whites. Because if I just drag the whites up, it'll continue to just smash things right up against the edge there. See that? I'm losing tons of detail by doing that.
Can
So
you
the-
make just his pants brighter?
Yeah, we would need to select the color range that his pants are, and then we could lighten his pants up if we wanted to. So blacks and shadows are kind of the same thing. The blacks are like this part right down here. If I lower that, it'll just start to crush these. That's called crushing the blacks. So let me show you. If I drag that down, it just starts to smash everything. Shadows, though, will try to darken some of those darker hues without, and see how it's just like compressing everything in here without smashing them against the bottom. And I'll bring that up just a little bit. So I kind of like that. And then I could, now that I've got all that, I could maybe darken these blacks a little bit just to get more of a contrast. So I actually, if we go turn off this basic color correction, I'll show you the before and after. Okay, so it's not extreme, but it's a little bit more natural looking, right? Question?
Yeah, is there a way to default it to the master clip versus defaulting it to the other one?
You can, if you right click on it in your timeline and then reveal in project, select reveal in project, and then select it in your project, then it'll go to your master. Did it
Okay,
highlight?
so if I'm moving from one clip to another, I still have to click back master clip every time, other than doing it this way?
Yeah, it should,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. It's an honest mistake. You'll pop back over to this panel and you'll be doing settings on the clip in the timeline instead of the master. So that can be kind of frustrating. Email your legislator. Tell them to tell Adobe to fix it. Just kidding.
If only that worked.
All right. And then you can adjust saturation. This is a pretty saturated shot. Let's see what saturation is doing in our scopes. See how it's kind of turning everything white? Got a little bit of red there. Lots of saturation, spreads those colors out, but that's pretty gnarly looking skin. So let's just, I might want to like desaturate it just a little bit so that we can come back in and we can add some saturation to various colors if we want to. All right, so let's collapse the basic color correction, go to creative. Creative has a bunch of stuff in it that now that we've got this flat look, we can go to our looks menu, and Premiere has a bunch of these crazy looking filters that we can add to it. So there's matrix color, and then we can, this is like your Instagram filters. So it'll do stuff and then you can turn down the intensity or turn up the intensity. We can do more of a blue. And then that adds, see how much darker that made all these shadows? If you think maybe you like that, you could go back up to your basic color correction and lighten up the shadows a whole bunch so that your look doesn't mess up those shadows quite as much. So you'll be bouncing back and forth a bit. I'm going to do none, and we can add some sharpness to this clip. We can make it have kind of a faded film look where it lightens the blacks. If you go way faded film, then like see how much it compresses the highlights and the shadows together. Like there's like no contrast there whatsoever. Question?
Is there a quick way to like reset changes that you made?
Yeah, you can go to, Oh, you can in the, you can just turn it off if you don't want to use it.
If you go to the effects panel, you can just hit redo. That redoes everything.
Yeah, if you do it in the effects panel, you can do that, but I want to keep my basic correction without having all that creative stuff. I think if you just let the intensity be at 100, that's where that started. Faded film, and all the rest of these are 0, 0, 0, and 100 for those settings. Then you can change your tint balance. I don't have any tint. I need to add tint. So if I want to make my highlights even more blue, I can start pulling that more to the blue, and then I can then adjust the tint even more. Ooh, I kind of almost like that. All right. Curves. Curves are nice because they can add contrast, and they can change your color balance without destroying. Like, so if I wanted to clip my whites, I could just take the white all the way up and clip them off. Same thing with blacks. But if I leave, by the way, this is black down here at the bottom, and this is white up at the top. So one thing I can do is if I put a point here and a point here, I can add more dynamic range to my highlights and my shadows without altering that black point or that white point. But it just spreads this out even more to add more contrast. The more you spread all these colors out across from top to bottom, the brighter and more vibrant your picture is going to look. The more you compress those things, the more muted and faded things are going to look. If we wanted to go for a real indie look, I could like even push these in the opposite direction. And if you'll notice also, by decreasing the contrast, we've actually decreased our saturation. Like those colors just became a lot less saturated looking just by having less contrast. So if I wanted to get these blues to be even closer up here, I can go to the blue curve and I could turn the blue up a little bit. And then if I wanted to add a little bit to the green to make them, try to even balance them out even more. So that's kind of doing what I did with the eyedropper initially, which is kind of starting to turn the wall white, which I kind of might like that also. I don't know. This hue saturation curves thing. So let's say we want to, from an art direction standpoint, make all the blues really bright. If we go down to this hue circle or this hue wheel and we put a little dot on either side of the blues, and then we add another dot and we just like start turning the saturation up on that, then we can add tons of saturation to these blue colors. If I pull that around, it'll start these are kind of a little bit more cyan, so if I start grabbing some cyan, it'll add some contrast to her. Let me show you too, because we could like really desaturate his shoes. See, I just turned his shoes gray.
So you could almost use that to do more of like the Pleasantville effect.
Yeah, that's one thing you can do.
Is there like a
There's a lot of
way to do it,
rotoscoping
or-
done to do that also. Like if you're going to do that and you put a bunch of makeup on them that makes their face really flat, but then you put bright red lipstick, then you can really just desaturate everything except for the reds. You can like add saturation to the reds, and it'll do that same kind of thing. So we can also add lots of saturation to his shoes. Wham, bam, that's awesome.
It's legit.
Okay, too legit.
Too legit.
All right. So there's some There's some messing around you can do there. You can do even more additional color correction on the midtones, shadows, and highlights. Say if we want to keep pushing this even farther and make the shadows even kind of get like a red look, which makes it look even more faded, and then push the highlights toward even more blue.
It's
Okay,
almost getting
just
this,
adding more and more style.
like a sepia look to it.
Yeah, kind of like a Kodak or a Polaroid look.
Like a western.
Yeah. And then you can do hue, saturation, and levels. And what that means is you can isolate certain colors. Like if we really wanted to capture her shirt, and then capture even more of it. Then capture even more of it. Then what we could do is, with these selected, we can almost probably shift the color of her shirt. See if I can get some more of this here. Well, yep, there. Now we're getting her shirt. All right. That's supposed to change the color of her. Oh, here we go. We turn this thing. I'm waiting for the color of her shirt to change. Making myself look like an idiot again. I don't do this much. Okay. Anyway, if one of you figures out how to do that, that'd be great.
Extra credit?
Sure, some extra credit. Well, this should be changing it. Should be changing it anyway. See if I desaturate it, it's supposed to. There we go. I am changing it. Okay,
I want extra credit.
it's just not doing it very extreme. So I did change the color of her shirt. All right. And then last but not least, the vignette. Vignette is really nice because you can, if you're doing like a wedding video and you want it to make it look all pretty, and we've got all this bright stuff going on the side of them, and we don't want to focus on that, we want to focus on them, then you can bring a vignette into the mix and kind of darken the sides. So if I really crank this down and darken that vignette, you can see that really curving off around the sides. Now that's probably not very tasteful. I'd probably add more feather, make it a little more round, bring the midpoint out so it's not quite so obvious, and then bring the amount back up. So now we can see a before and after. It just helps you focus in on the middle, if the focus is on the middle. So, and now if I'm using that clip anywhere else, check it. It's already corrected. Now here's a pretty cool thing you can do. You can take that Lumetri color correction and you can copy it and paste it onto other clips. So welcome to the effects controls palette or panel. With any clip selected in the timeline, it's automatically going to have any effect that you've added to that clip show up in your effect controls. Lumetri color is technically it's an effect. Okay, it's just kind of built into the interface here. So if I go to my master clip over here, click back over to the effects controls, there it is right there, Lumetri color. You can copy that, Command C, puts it into your clipboard. Then I can go to my next clip on my timeline and hit Command V, and that'll paste it onto that one. And that gives me a baseline for color correcting the next clip. So this one, as we can see, is a bit brighter than this one, right? This one also has more saturation in it. So let's start with just those for right now. Let's go up to the master. Go to, oh, that pasted it to the actual clip. Oh, that's fine, I guess. Then, can you tell I don't spend as much time in this? Then, let's turn off the basic color correcting and turn it back on just to see where we're at. I think we're overexposed, so let's go to the Lumetri scopes. Whoa, that's bright. So if you look at this clip, the wall is like here, okay? It's like spread through all this area. In this clip, it's all smashed right here. Definitely different, right? So let's start by changing our exposure, bringing that down a little. Then I'm also going to, let's put the whites up a little bit, but bring the highlights down. We can also darken some of these shadows so we can kind of get that same contrast. And then add a little bit of saturation into this shot. Not that much. Okay, let's see how these compare now. Do those look like they belong a little bit better now? I think they do. And then you just kind of do that throughout. Okay, this shot's darker than this shot, but they're both probably darker than this shot. So you just kind of go through shot by shot using that first color correction as a baseline. Just going to paste that on there. This one, the shadows probably need to come up a little bit. I might bring the highlights down and then bring the exposure up slightly. Whoa, too much. And then the saturation is good because that's the same camera that we shot this shot with. We actually need to add some contrast. Okay, so select that clip. Maybe add a little bit of exposure. Pull the shadows down a little. Maybe that's better. This clip was shot with the same camera as this one, so I'm going to copy the Lumetri from this one. So I'm going to go up to my effects controls, grab the master. Oh, see, that put it on the hallway scene. Copy that, paste it here, see how it looks. I might want to go down to my curves. Pull that red back down just a little bit. There. Same with this one. Don't need to capture those shoes anymore. Alright, so there's that one again. Let's copy the Lumetri color from the previous one. Copy, paste. And then you just do this throughout the entire project till everything is color corrected. These outside shots, let's just look at these real quick. I'm going to select that one, go up to the master. That's actually not so bad. I might just go to my curves. Oh, directly to my curves. And just add a little bit of contrast. Darken the darks a little bit. Lighten the lights. that look okay?
Shirt's a little off,
The shirt is off?
yeah, in my opinion, but
What's wrong with it?
I feel like the symbol got darker and harder to understand.
In here?
Yeah,
It's not a totally black shirt, so I don't know that I would want to. I don't know that I would want to crush those too much.
It's a gray shirt.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying it got too dark and I would lighten it.
Oh, the shirt got too dark.
That's
Yes,
the right
indeed.
color that it usually is.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's just my personal whatever.
Keon, you need your shirt checked.
Yeah, it's a little better.
Is that a little better?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't play with it too much after that. You can just screw it up.
And then this one, just take the Lumetri color for this one. Paste it on this one. That makes that look a little better. I might want to try and get some detail back in the sky. I knew there was a little bit before, but not much. This one's nasty. We would need to try to isolate this color, like these colors, and shift them to magenta a little bit because they're super cyan right now. But that's mixed lighting for you. Oh, whoops. I'm making changes to the wrong clip. Okay. Let me tell you what I just did. Even though I'm seeing this head, this clip with my playhead right here, the previous clip was selected in the timeline, which means I'm making changes to something that I don't have my playhead over, and it's not going to update. So if you ever come over and you're messing with effects and you're like, why isn't it changing anything? Just look down and make sure you got the right clip selected. Okay? Because what did I just do to this one? I just shifted it way, way orange. Which might not be a bad idea to do. I don't know. This is definitely too orange. But, so for the color, I definitely want you to mess with this tool a bunch. I'm not the world's best color corrector. I can make things balanced and I can make things super stylized, but for like really high quality color correction, I'm not all that skilled at it. But this, tell me, does this look better than that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lots better, right? Does that look better than that? As long as you can make it look better. Try not to make it look worse. But definitely put some color correction on it and then send that to me with your sound. Like your sound and your colors should be. So your project should look something like this, with the sound duplicated with some keyframes on it to balance out the audio, and then color correction on it to try and make your clips look like they all belong together. That's really, I mean, I could really mess the color up in this up with this whole scene, but as long as I'm going from shot to shot and it doesn't look like there's a shift in the color from shot to shot, that's correct. Okay? Even if it looks like crap, if it all looks like crap in the same way. Because what you don't want is to see, you know, this shot go to this shot, because they don't belong together. If you think they do, I'll try to explain this more. If you're not understanding why these two don't go together. Okay? Does that look like it belongs with that?
No.
No. Like, this is pretty neutral looking white up here. It's got some contrast. He's got some, you know, peach looking skin. This shot is super orange. She's all orange. The light behind her is yellow. Her shirt is a completely different color here than it is here. Okay? So that's what you're going for, is so that all the clips at least look like they belong in the same scene together. All right. Happy color correcting.